player Max Crosby back with the Raiders for now. We'll see how that unfolds. And listen, the goal of free agency, of course, to improve your roster. And some teams have done that better than others. So, Ryan, I'm going to start with you here. Who won free agency in your mind?
Guys, we're in the year of our Lord, 2026, and the New York Jets have finally done something right. They were busy little bees over the last couple days. They traded for Minka Fitzpatrick early on in the free agency period. They got a guy who got one interception last year, which was one more than the entire team got. That was a step in the right direction. They bolstered the edge rushers. They got David Onyemata. They made a bunch of moves to make that team better. No, by the way, they got my guy Eugene Cyril Smith the third. You can see some of these other selections here. Nahshon Wright had 5 picks last year for the Bears. So they got better in a lot of places. Now, the two edge rushers they got, Joseph Asai and Kingsley Enagbare, they're above average. They're not going to be the Trey Hendricksons or Max Crosby's when he's healthy of the world, but those are steps in the right direction. And I honestly think the offensive line is a really good offensive line. I think that Geno is going to return closer to the form that we saw in Seattle than the not so great show, for lack of a better word, that we saw last year in Las Vegas that got everyone fired. So great job, New York Jets. The Fighting Rick Spielmans might win more than 3 games this year, B-Mac.
Hey, great minds think alike, Ryan, because I had no clue you were picking the New York Jets, because I also picked the New York Jets. They were unbelievable in terms of this free agency period. Now, granted, a year ago, they were a team that did not have a pulse. So there was a lot of holes they needed to fill. And I think they did a phenomenal job in doing so. You talked about some of the names. And what about the laughing stock of the National Football League, unfortunately, was the New York Jets not getting 1 turnover. So you know what they did? They said, you know what, we're going to go get guys in the secondary that have been known to force turnovers. Minka Fitzpatrick, granted, he only had 1 interception a year ago, but throughout his entire career, he's been known to be a guy that can take Wilson away from opposing offenses. Then you look at Nahshon Wright a year ago. I mean, career-like year, he forced 8 turnovers. Recovered 3 fumbles and 5 interceptions. So he was a guy that was extremely sticky in terms of taking the football away. So it was a slam dunk for the New York Jets. And just, for sake of this discussion, I would like to throw in the Carolina Panthers. I think they did a great job as well, because the thing about the Carolina Panthers, Ryan and Madeline, they won their division last year. It was almost like kind of by accident, right? Because of how the season played out and then the uncertainties with some of the other teams. But now they will be the team that the other teams in the NFC South will be hunting. And one thing they needed to do was improve the defense. They went out and spent top dollar on Jalen Phillips. If he can stay healthy, paired with Derek Brown on that defensive line, man, look out, especially in the NFC South. And you look at one of the more coveted off-ball linebackers in Devin Lloyd, giving him a $40+ million deal for 3 years. He's a playmaker at the second level for the linebacker group as a whole. So those 2 guys in general will improve that defense mightily, not to mention they still have the draft to improve upon as well. So when you look at what they have going on in their neighborhood, the NFC South, winning that division again, and still with some of the other teams trying to figure things out, the Carolina Panthers definitely improved from what we saw in 2025 based on the roster. And I still think they will make more significant additions with the draft right around the corner. So shots out to the Carolina Panthers and the New York Jets.
All right, a hat tip to the Panthers and to the solidarity of the Jets getting some love after their free agency moves over here. But listen, we've all got room for improvement somewhere. But B-Mac, let's start with you on this one. Who's the biggest loser in free agency? Who could have done better?
Well, we briefly talked about this team, and it's not about doing better because they did a great job. It's just about the rug being pulled from underneath them in the Las Vegas Raiders. Because when you look at what the Raiders done, I mean, signing Linderbaum, granted, they had the most cap space available, and they spent wisely, in my opinion. They improved their team dramatically, trading for Teron Johnson, big-time nickel corner. You look at Linderbaum, you look at some of the other notable names that they brought in. Man, Kwity Paye, another talented edge rusher. They did a great job. You look at the Georgia linebackers and the Kobe Dean and Quay Walker. Most of the guys they signed, they will start for them, right? But then when you factor all of that into the equation based on what they did Monday with some of these deals being agreed upon, and then also knowing that this past Friday, they had a deal in place to get 2 first-round selections from the Baltimore Ravens with the 14th pick coming this year. So you had number 1 and the 14th pick, and then all of a sudden, no deal? It feels like the Raiders fans, they were punched in the stomach and they did not see the blow coming. And those are the worst blows to receive when you can't prepare for it. It's punched in the gut and it knocks all the wind out of you. That's how it feels for the Raiders. Even though they had a phenomenal free agent period, but just seeing how the deal was just voided, it's tough to really swallow. But hopefully they have some cups.
It's like the Raiders can't have nice things. The worst part wasn't the Raiders thing. The worst part, B-Mac, was I was sitting next to Madeline talking about what the Raiders are going to do with the 14th pick. And the very next words out of her mouth are, they backed out of the Max Crosby trade, the Ravens have. So I was made to look sillier than usual, but I think you're exactly right. I'm going to go with a team that I've been talking about for the last few days just because, number one, they've been handcuffed by the salary cap. And number two, they have done very little to help their new best player. I'm talking about the Miami Dolphins. They signed Malik Willis. I think Malik Willis deserved the deal that he got based on the play that he did once he was traded to the Packers. We saw a different version of Malik Willis. The problem is he's going to a team that currently has 4 players. They gave away all their best players either through the trading or letting their contracts expire or releasing them. There's no Tyreek. Obviously, Tua's now in Atlanta, and I think Malik is going to be an upgrade over Tua. We talked about Minka going to the Jets. Bradley Chubb just signed with the division rival Buffalo Bills. And there's not a lot left. And oh, by the way, you still got $99 million on the books that you got to pay Tua to play for the Falcons. So, you know, I was asked earlier today if the Dolphins are going to match their win total from a year ago, which is 7 games. They may not do that in 2 years. Now, I could be proven wrong if they make some moves over the next 3-4 months. But right now, as we sit here, this team is barren. There is nothing in the cupboard. And if you feel bad for the Raiders, you should feel truly awful for where the Miami Dolphins currently find themselves, at least how the roster looks. They have a new head coach, new GM. Maybe things are going to turn around, but it's going to take a lot of work.
Well, at least they don't have to pay state income tax down there in Miami. So they got that going for them. And at least they didn't have to rip up their mock draft that they just made yesterday, Ryan. But you know what? We got plenty of time for more mock drafts and more analysis as NFL free agency. That's done. The NFL new league year has begun. And we take a look at the top 10 remaining free agents as the calendar turns into the 2026 NFL league year. Kyler Murray of Ravens signed Trey Hendrickson to a 4-year, $112 million deal Wednesday. This coming one day after Baltimore shocked the NFL world by pulling out of the trade to acquire Max Crosby from the Raiders. Reports indicating the Ravens were not happy with Crosby's medicals. Here's Ravens GM Eric DeCosta on the switch-up.
We've done a lot of different trades, and one of the key things is to, you bring the player in and you try to get as much information as you can. We did that, and we were not able to complete the process of acquiring the player based on, our assessment of the situation. Very, very, I think, disappointing to me. Nobody more disappointed than me. Player I greatly admire. I think one of my favorite players in the entire NFL. I know our fans were upset, devastated. I understand that. Tough situation. So I didn't really look at him as like, oh, we'll do this because of that. It was really more, how do we get better as a football team? In terms of Trey, I think we came to a point probably after we lost Tyler, where as we're trying to find the best way for us to get better as a football team, Trey kind of made a lot of sense as a possible guy to look at. So we started some discussions with he and his agent, thinking that, potentially we'd have 2 pass rushers on the defensive line on both sides of the line. Again, I think it was disappointing, to us, and probably in a way, potentially disappointing probably to Trey as well.
I'm joined now by CBS Sports NFL analyst Ryan Wilson and 2-time Super Bowl champion Bryant McFadden to break down the latest in free agency and, of course, starting with this Ravens move. Pulling out of the trade for Max Crosby, then Wednesday morning in a move that surprised nobody, signing Trey Hendrickson, pending a physical, of course. B-Mac, you called this when the Crosby news broke last night. What is your reaction now that it's official?
I'm not surprised. I saw the vision before it became a reality with the shocking news that we discussed together, Madeline, last night with the Ravens pulling out of the Max Crosby trade. And I said it felt like this was, and we will never get the honest truth, right, Ryan? We can speculate and give our opinions of what we think actually happened, but we will never get the honest truth. But one thing I can tell you, this entire ordeal looks very, very fishy coming from the Baltimore Ravens, seeing their actions, not even 24 hours ago, seeing what they have currently done in signing Trey Hendrickson. That's why I said what I said. I felt like with them pulling out of the Max Crosby deal and seeing that Trey Hendrickson number is lower than what it was some days ago, the Ravens felt like, you know what, we can go get a guy like Trey Hendrickson, bring him in. He's still a high-level pass rusher, and we keep 2 first-round selections. Not to mention this year's pick for the Baltimore Ravens in the first round is 14th. That is a high-value pick, especially when you're the Baltimore Ravens, where you're not used to picking in the teens. Usually you're in the 20s, in the late 20s. So when you look at where they're currently sitting and seeing that a very, very high-level pass rusher was still available, and clearly there were some conversations being had between Trey Hendrickson and his representation and the Baltimore Ravens, where Baltimore felt like, you know what, we're going to get this deal done. Just think about it like this, Madeline, Ryan. Think about how fast this deal became public. Early this morning, they just pulled out of the Max Crosby trade late last night. And early this morning, the terms of the deal was publicized. So this was a conversation that was being had yesterday, maybe even the day before yesterday. Who knows? But I can tell you this much. It doesn't look right. It smells fishy. And there will continue to be speculations with the Baltimore Ravens in terms of what they did or did not do. We will never get the truth. But I can tell you this much. They feel a lot better knowing they got Trey Hendrickson in their uniform, in their organization, and they still keep their 2 first-round selections. 2 first-round selections for this year and next year.
Right. B-Mac, I was actually joking when this thing happened. It's like the wedding's called off and the bride's left at the altar and the groom's like, well, you know, he's not saying anything. And then next morning at 8 a.m., he's remarried. He's like, wait a second, what happened? I thought we were supposed to get married yesterday. And suddenly you got a whole new family. I did think it was funny that Eric DeCosta said no one's more gutted than he is, and he feels bad for Trey. You might want to feel bad for the Raiders and Max Crosby as well. The other thing, here's the last thing I'll say about this, Maddie and B-Mac. The Ravens do have some cover in that going after the story that they're going after these 2 great pass rushers, which seems far-fetched when you think about it. But if you dig beneath the surface, they were terrible last year rushing the passer, and they still have a need for another pass rusher. Maybe that's what they're going to do with 14 now. But they could have actually used both Max and Trey on that defense. So there's some cover there. But B-Mac's overall point is the one that I think most people come around to. It smells a little fishy, Maddie, and it doesn't seem quite right on the surface. Maybe there is more to it. I don't think we'll ever get that story like B-Mac said.
I mean, of course, any front office would dream of having Max Crosby and Trey Hendrickson in your pass rush, but there's a slight little detail called a salary cap that makes it a little challenging to do that. But either way, Baltimore ended up with a talented player.